Hello my friends, this is a bit of a different video in that I don't really have any articles, and frankly not even much of a script. This is just going to be me giving my own thoughts on the idea of pride. Pride has a dual nature. On the one hand, pride is considered to be a positive trait. LGBTQ pride exists because traditionally LGBTQ people were shamed for what the wider culture considered deviant behavior. Black pride, as defined by those who espouse the position, is a response to the dominance of white cultures and encourages black people to celebrate black culture and embrace their African heritage. And because this is how social justice likes to fractionate its identity politics, there seem to be pride movements for just about everything out there. Autism pride, disability pride, furry pride, hell, there's even illegal immigrant pride or undocumented pride or whatever you want to call it. If you've got an identity, then there's a pride movement for you. But on the other hand, just because you've got an identity with a pride movement doesn't mean it's automatically going to be considered a good thing. White pride on the surface sounds like the mirror of black pride, but is also the main slogan used by legitimate white supremacists. Straight pride sounds, frankly, a little bit silly, but it was actually considered deadly serious by the alt-left, considering just how much pushback the straight pride parade earlier this year received. And there's a whole lot of public discourse right now surrounding the negativity of nationalism, and what is nationalism if not national pride? But nationalism is where the discussion starts to get a little bit weird, isn't it? Nationalist sentiments in the US or the UK are considered to be oppressive by the social justice warriors. They view these nations as having uniquely problematic pasts. So an American citizen with national pride for the US, or a British citizen with national pride for the UK, are simply a part of that problem. But not all forms of nationalism are considered to be bad by the SJWs. For example, they'll often see Israeli nationalism as horrifying, but Palestinian nationalism as a moral obligation to support. Or, back in the UK, they'll often view British nationalism as bad, but consider the Remainers and their quasi-nationalistic devotion to the European Union as having the correct form of nationalism, an EU nationalism supporting continental unity. And then, when you get into ethnic pride, the whole thing really does go out the window, doesn't it? French pride is problematic in France, but empowering in Canada. Aboriginal pride, Chinese pride, Jewish pride. Choose an ethnicity, and frankly, as long as they're not predominantly native to Europe, they'll probably be considered beautiful instead of oppressive. And even then, that's not a hard and fast rule, because Irish and Italian pride are certainly more accepted in the US than British or German pride. And heaven forbid you're a person with open Taiwanese pride walking through a Chinatown. Pride has a dual nature. There's a reason that religious types figured out that pride is both the greatest source of sin as well as the greatest font of empowerment. Pride is equal parts self-respect and arrogance. And I think the reason why the radical left swings between extreme acceptance and extreme opposition of pride depending on its source is because they don't understand that pride is both self-respect and arrogance at the same time. It's not that some forms of pride are self-respect and other forms of pride are arrogance. That would be too easy, and frankly too convenient. That would just allow the opportunists to label their pride as self-respect, their opponent's pride as arrogance, and call it a day. No. All pride is equal parts self-respect and arrogance, and it is those two qualities at the exact same time, because when you get right down to it, people are not the anima of their demographics, people are individuals. It's easy to see the self-respect in something like black pride. The ethnic story of African Americans is of a people who survived generational slavery and poverty. There is self-respect to be found in that. But the black people of today claiming their ancestors' accomplishments as their own is arrogance. Frankly, I don't think there's that many black slaves left in the US anymore. And for a modern black person to talk as if they personally know what slavery's like, and that the white people around them are personally responsible for slavery, is where the arrogance comes in. The idea of pride as both self-respect and arrogance at the same time can be mapped to any type of pride in this manner. Yes, even something as near universally maligned as white pride. It will always be a form of self-respect to appreciate your own immutable traits, whatever they may be, as an intrinsic part of you, of which you have the exclusive right to enjoy in any way you like. And it will always be a form of arrogance to believe that these immutable traits somehow give you dominion over the hardships or the accomplishments of other people who just so happen to share those same immutable traits with you. In other words, it's good to appreciate that you are the inheritor of a legacy, whatever that legacy is. And it's not good to claim that just because you've inherited that legacy, that the deeds of its previous inheritors are now your deeds. Here's where gratitude comes in. I think the idea of pride is fundamentally flawed. I think, even though pride is self-respect and arrogance at the same time, there is a better way to conceptualize the situation, and that would be gratitude. When you're prideful of your race, your ethnicity, your nation, even your sexuality, you have to constantly balance the dark side of that pride. I understand why pride was originally chosen as the concept. For example, with LGBTQ pride or black pride, pushback against those movements was so overpowering that they required an overshooting of the mark just to land in neutral territory. It's very much our opponents are extremists, so we have to be extremists too, in order to reach middle ground mentality. But that's simply the wrong model. I'm grateful for the heritage I've inherited. Not even in a familial sense, though that obviously counts, but the cultural heritage of being Canadian, and the British and French heritage that Canada spawned from. It includes personal freedom, equality under the law, the consent of the governed. It's the heritage of liberalism. But not just that. The racial heritage, the ethnic heritage, even other things like sexuality or talents or interests, or local sub-heritage, or anything else that I was given at birth by virtue of being born that I did not have to cultivate myself. I'm grateful for all of that stuff. I make no attempts at pride about it. I don't pretend that just because I was given a specific list of qualities at birth, that list is automatically better than somebody else's list who might have had a different roll at the dice. I'm simply grateful for what I do have. That's why gratitude is better than pride. Pride is for people who believe the world is a zero-sum game, where the less territory you stake for your team means the more territory other teams will stake out for themselves. So everybody has to enter into the eternal power struggle. I would guess that's why it appeals to the postmodernist left. But that's not how I see the world. Unlike pride, gratitude is not an external claim that must be constantly enforced and reinforced through grandiose statements or large public displays of egotism. Gratitude is internal. It's understanding that evolution has worked for millions of years to create you. Yes, with all of your flaws, but also with all of your merits. And the right path forward is taking what you've been given and building onto it in your own unique way. If pride gets in the way of that, it's because the prideful are too busy claiming what they've already inherited as their own accomplishments to actually accomplish anything themselves. As you live in your culture, it shapes you, but you also shape it. And over the course of your life, you become a part of that heritage. And someday, somebody else will have the choice between being grateful for what you've given them and continuing the work, or being prideful in what you've given them and claim your achievements as theirs. I'm not even talking in terms of reproduction. Obviously, having kids is one way to leave a legacy behind, but there's many other ways to contribute to a heritage too. What I mean is, every time I see a pride parade, or I see any identity-based movement or protest or whatever, I see a person who has no personality outside of what they've inherited from others, and therefore has nothing of their own to contribute to that heritage. I see a person who does not shape politics, but merely acts it out. I see a person who has become so subsumed in their pride that they've forgotten the virtue of humility. I see a person who isn't grateful for what they've been given beyond its use as a hammer to bludgeon their opponents. And frankly, I've seen somebody who's missed the whole point. The whole point of pride, the whole point of gratitude, of all of it. Self-love doesn't mean being out and loud and proud, whatever it is you're out about. In fact, if you had true self-love, you probably wouldn't even feel a need to be loud and proud in the first place.